Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for True show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, and it's a pleasure to welcome you back with us. Many of you have been asking how to avail yourselves of our previous shows, and it's very simple. You go on YouTube, click on A Time for Truth show, and hit the subscribe button. And we would love to have you one of our members and avail you of all the shows. So tonight on this segment, we're going to cover something extremely important, which is the economics of our future. Where are we headed? What should you know? What may not be what you think it is. And we're very, very honored and we're very lucky to have a tremendously experienced expert, really, in this field, all the way from California, Mr. Bruce Wiseman and engineer Buddha. If you can put his pictures up on the screen. Mr. Wiseman not only is a successful entrepreneur and #1 best-selling international award-winning author, writing under the pen name, a very famous book. His name is John Truman Wolfe, and the author of a very important book which exposed the real forces behind the global financial crisis. And that book is called The Coming Financial Crisis, A Look Behind the Wizard's Curtain. And not only does it do all these things, but he's also a humanitarian. And Mr. Wiseman is also the #1 Amazon bestseller, with exposing, with his book, the actual source that's behind the global financial crisis, as well as the agenda behind it, in implementing something called the bail-in procedures by big banks. Bail-in enabling failing banks to actually confiscate funds in the depositors' accounts and convert them to bank stock. Bruce has spoken to bankers and business executives around the world, and he's done so. There you see his book on the agenda of what he calls the global financial mafia. And he's provided real solutions to deal with their predatory programs. In fact, it's amazing that the Chinese government actually flew him to Beijing to consult with them on the causes and solutions to the global financial crisis. He spent several days there in Beijing and discussing the information revealed in his best-selling book. It offered solutions to international matters that benefits not only Beijing, but also our country in Washington, D.C. And he called his trip to China fascinating in the extreme. I can only imagine. He's also the editor and publisher of Strategic Financial Intelligence, a monthly financial newsletter dealing with investing and the economy, with a focus on precious metals, cryptocurrencies, and NFTs. So he's really quite a fascinating human being, and really we're very, very lucky to have him here on our show tonight. And Buddha, if you will, if you could, let's bring up and bid a warm welcome to Mr. Bruce Wiseman. Welcome to A Time for Truth show.
Dr. Bernard, thank you so much for having me. My pleasure.
You know what? I'm blown away with your knowledge, what you've done, and who you've consulted. And so I know that this is going to be an extremely valuable show. We're probably going to have this over a series of shows because there's probably a tremendous amount to cover, and I'm going to give you some free reign. But first I wanted to ask you, which I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, when you were a young man, what were your dreams and goals?
Well, as a young man, I have to confess that my primary dreams and goals as a young man were football. I played a lot of sports as a kid, and you had dreams. Of course, Tom Brady probably wasn't even born yet. But, I did a lot of athletics as a youngster, and that's kind of where my attention was growing up.
Very interesting. What position did you play in football?
Quarterback.
Oh, so really what you've been doing, you've done for a long time.
I had a good arm. I don't know if I haven't thrown a football in a lot of years, but I had a good arm as a young man. I could and perception, as a quarterback, or you're throwing the ball, you have to kind of predict where the receiver is going to be, not where he is. So I like that, being able to, kind of judge where my receiver was going to be and throw there. And I don't know, it was kind of exciting for me.
Oh, I can imagine. It looks like you lived a very exciting life, and so here you were in sports, and quarterbacking, and how did you decide then to start on your career as a writer and an author?
Well, later in life, much later in life, I opened a financial management company in Hollywood, in LA, with my partner, Kevin Burke. We were business managers. That's a niche industry in Los Angeles and New York. We handled the business and financial affairs of entertainers. So our clients were actors, actresses, producers, directors, screenwriters, and among other hats there, jobs there, as the executive director, I wrote the monthly newsletter. And I would, write on, matters of importance, the tax code, but I got a little bored writing about, how to deduct the most legally and so forth. And I changed, instead of writing these things for the newsletter, I started writing a story. And I found that I really enjoyed it. I wrote a story about a private eye who was based in Berkeley, California. And I continued from there. I continued with that story. I wrote a book about it. I've got 3 fiction books of this same protagonist, this private eye. I've got the fourth about half completed in my computer. You mentioned my books on the global financial crisis, and you may well know, I mean, nonfiction sells much better than fiction unless you're John Grisham or something. But I get great joy in writing fiction. You can make things up, and it's different than sitting down in front of a bunch of international bankers and so forth. Anyway, that's how I got started. I was at our firm in L.A., Wiseman and Burke. It still carries our name, although Kevin Burke and I are long since retired, but they kept our name and still operates in L.A.
And so really before you were an author then, you had really heavily been in the financial center then, financial sector.
Well, I had a kind of an odd career in that regard. I went to San Jose State, which is in San Jose, California, not surprisingly. I studied history. I got a graduate degree in history. I taught there at San Jose State as a young man in my early 20s. And then my father, who was a good Jewish merchant, he was never religious and he never raised us in the faith, but he was a good merchant, and he had a appliance and furniture store, and he drove down to San Jose. I was in the middle of my graduate work. I had a child, my first born daughter, and he said he was going to retire, wanted me to come up and take over the business, and he'd worked his whole life, and I felt that I should do that for him. I had no interest in the business, frankly, but anyway, I was going to go to Berkeley for a PhD, and then decided to go and help my dad out. So I worked there for a few years. It was clear to me he had no intention of retiring. While there, among other things, I worked in the controller's office and learned finances, money, taxes, accounts receivable, accounts payable. And when I decided to leave my dad, there weren't any teaching positions open. I mean, I had a graduate degree in history, American history, Western American history, with honors, but I couldn't find a job as a teacher. The teaching profession was having a hard time, but there was an opening at a bank. And because of my experience working in the accounting office and getting people financed to buy a television or a washer or a new living room set, I knew how to, I knew financing, and the bank hired me. I did very well at that bank, and got my chops in. People come in and they're looking for a loan. They've got a business plan, and I had to analyze it and so forth. So that's how I got my start in banking. I did very well there. I became the senior credit officer, and I trained all the lenders and all the branch managers on, getting deposits and so forth. So I did that very well. The bank kept promoting me, to my credit, modesty aside, but I chose in the early 70s, and I went to work with a newly founded educational organization in Oregon called the Delphian Foundation, Delphian School. So I was up there kind of helping that organization for some years. Then for about 8 years, then my wife needed to do some things in Los Angeles, so we moved to L.A. and I set up this business management company with my partner. And for, I don't know, 20, 25 years, handled the financial affairs, business and financial affairs of some of the biggest names in Hollywood, screenwriters and actors, actresses, and so forth and so on. So there you go. There's a short history.
It's amazing. Since you were in that field, what kind of advice, which is what we've gotten to so far, would you give people when, because you've dealt with people coming in to buy, like you said, furniture or TVs or blah, blah, blah. So what advice would you give our viewers? Because, a lot of them may not have that economic background or basis. So go ahead and I'll give you free rein. What would you say is important for them to realize?
Well, right now, Bernard, and I've been writing, you mentioned my newsletter. I publish a financial newsletter called Strategic Financial Intelligence. And I do a radio show. I do a live radio show out of LA once a week, every Thursday. And my focus is what is really occurring currently, which is a global reset of the global currency situation, meaning CBDCs are coming. For folks that don't know that acronym, CBDC stands for Central Bank Digital Currencies. Cash is going away. It's going to be gone. And in its place are going to be digital currencies in your bank account. So there are.
When I just interrupt you. When do you feel that the cash is going to disappear?
Well, it's a good question. CBDCs are rolling out across the planet as we speak. There are three small countries that are operating on CBDCs now. People get paid in digital currency. They shop in digital currency. The leading country on the planet, industrial country, is China. They've been running a test on 140 million people successfully, and they intend to roll out the e-yuan very soon across their entire country. The United States has been behind in this revolution. And let me repeat, because people probably listen to things or read things, and I don't know that they appreciate. This is a global currency revolution. Money is going away. Cash is going away. Bank accounts will be digital. So, so I'm not a fan of digital currencies, but my view is this: they're coming. There's no stopping this, to my mind. So if it's going to be digital currencies, I just assume the U.S. be out in front, but China's kicking our rear end here. Now, to get to your question, when are they coming? When is cash going away? It's not going to be tomorrow or next week. I would guess. I mean, if you look at the stats, which I do every week and probably daily, what countries are moving forward to CBDCs, that graph is going straight up. I think it'll be a couple of years before that comes to the U.S., but it's growing across the planet as we speak. I don't like them. I mean, but they're coming. So if they're coming, how do we deal with them? How do you deal with the fact that you've got digital currencies in your bank account that the government can monitor? The Fourth Amendment is gone, will be gone. Not only can they control your currencies, because your account will probably be with the Federal Reserve Bank, but they can control behavior. You know, guy walks into the liquor store. He says, buy another 6-pack of beer. He gives the clerk his card and he gets back a note. Now, this is the second 6-pack this month. Sorry. You haven't been vaccinated. Okay. As soon as you're vaccinated, we'll open up your bank account again. So I don't like to give bad news to your audience, but and the kinds of behavior control that I'm talking about isn't tomorrow or next week, but it's coming. So I encourage people to avoid some of the destructive nature of this activity. They should accumulate precious metals. They have some gold and silver. Good, they should get some more. If they don't, they should acquire some gold and silver. I'm a bigger fan of silver than gold, but either one's fine. And I would encourage people.
Let me ask you a question to interject. Because I've always wondered about this. I said, well, how do you know who you're buying from? How do you know that it's really? I don't know if I'm being skeptical. How do I know it's really gold? How do I know it's really silver? I have no expertise in it. So can you answer those things first? Is who should they buy from? And how do they know that what they're buying is actually, in today's world, with all of the shams that exist, is really what it's supposed to be?
It's a good question. I deal with a company and have for 50 years with a company down in Newport Beach called Monex, M-O-N-E-X, Monex.com, M-O-N-E-X.com. They've been there for decades and decades. My rep there is named Mark. And full transparency, not the reason that I recommend Monex, but when my clients go there and buy, he sends me a little silver as a thank you. That's just, I've never asked for it, and that wouldn't make any difference because I've been dealing with them for a long time. And it's a good question because you want a company that is honest and has been there a long time. So I've been, working with Monex since the 70s. How to tell if something's good or not? The best thing to buy are what are called eagles. Most industrial countries in the world have mint bullion coins. So a 1 ounce gold coin is called a gold eagle. A 1 ounce silver coin is called a silver eagle. The government produces those. So in Canada they're called maple leaves. In China they're called pandas. In South Africa, they've got them. Australia. In the U.S. they're called eagles. So you can buy like 1 ounce coins, and I like silver better because. Right now, gold's about 2,000, just a few bucks short of 2,000. And if you're going to buy a gold eagle, there's a premium on those. So, 20 some odd hundred. Silver is currently selling for about 24 bucks. And a silver eagle there's a premium on that. But, if things get really rough, buying gas or groceries with a $30 coin is a lot easier than with a $2,000 coin. So I shop at Monex. I would buy eagles, gold or silver eagles. And again, I've been dealing with them for how many years that is, since the 70s. So, and they've been there a long, long time. They're well established. So,
say you have this, because people probably out there watching the show, and we're going to have more shows because obviously it was so much to cover, but let's just finish this off because we're getting near the end of the show. So let's say they have these eagles. So then let's say that they transfer to digital currency. What are they going to, can you keep these eagles, or you have to now give them to the government and they're going to put this into your bank account? How's that going to work?
Well, I don't think and I may be wrong here because I'm not certain. I don't think the government will outlaw them like they did in 1933. They outlawed gold. Franklin D. Roosevelt outlawed gold. I don't think that's going to happen. It might, but I would just keep them, and I think we could call it a black market will develop around CBDCs. I think people will be disgusted with them. They're very unpopular here. They implemented CBDCs in Nigeria, and only 5% of the public are using them, and they're writing in opposition to not being able to have cash. So we'll have to see what happens here. I mean, they'll roll out a major PR program saying how good and convenient they are and how easy they are to use. But you would just keep your precious metals, your bullion coins, and you have two purposes here. One is just what we've been talking about, in that you've got something you can use to buy and sell. And two is the capital appreciation. I think precious metals are going to have a very good year, very good. So the value of those coins will go up. That's a prediction. That's not a promise. But that's my opinion, and I think they'll do quite well.
Okay. Well, it's important. You have so much to actually relate to us, and I think we're pretty much to the end of the show. Engineer, how much time do we have left? Well, yeah. So we have about a minute left. So why don't we do this? Because we're going to have definitely another show with you, a few shows, I'm sure. So what final statement would you like to make for this show, Mr. Wiseman? And we'll obviously continue on our next one. What would you like to say for tonight's show?
Well, I think some good advice is for Americans, which is whom I assume watches the show primarily, is if you don't have any precious metals, just start accumulating some. You don't have to spend a whole bunch of money. Just start, or you can. I mean, you can spend a bunch of money. But I would start accumulating precious metals with the view that digital currencies are coming, and you can get ahead of that problem and start accumulating some precious metals. That would be my parting words.
Well, you know what? I am very happy that you were on the show. I'm sure the viewers are very happy. I'm going to be looking forward to your next segment. And for those of you watching, let's take a look at Mr. Wiseman's advice and maybe start accumulating some precious metals and educate yourselves on these CBDCs and what will or won't happen. And we will see you with Mr. Wiseman again on our next episode of A Time for Truth show. Have a very good night.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet